This is A Course in Miracles, Chapter 1, Section 7, Distortions of Miracle Impulses. Your distorted perceptions produce a dense cover over miracle impulses, making it hard for them to reach your own awareness. The confusion of miracle impulses with physical impulses is a major perceptual distortion. Physical impulses are misdirected miracle impulses. All real pleasure comes from doing God's will. This is because not doing it is a denial of self. Denial of self results in illusions, while correction of the error brings release from it. Do not deceive yourself into believing that you can relate in peace to God or to your brothers with anything external. Child of God, you were created to create the good, the beautiful, and the holy. Do not forget this. The love of God, for a little while, must still be expressed through one body to another because vision is still so dim. You can use your body best to help you enlarge your perception so you can achieve real vision, of which the physical eye is incapable. Learning to do this is the body's only true usefulness. Fantasy is a distorted form of vision. Fantasies of any kind are distortions because they always involve twisting perception into unreality. Actions that stem from distortions are literally the reactions of those who know not what they do. Fantasy is an attempt to control reality according to false needs. Twist reality in any way, and you are perceiving destructively. Fantasies are a means of making false associations and attempting to obtain pleasure from them. But although you can perceive false associations, you can never make them real except to yourself. You believe in what you make. If you offer miracles, you will be equally strong in your belief in them. The strength of your conviction will then sustain the belief of the miracle receiver. Fantasies become totally unnecessary as the wholly satisfying nature of reality becomes apparent to both giver and receiver. Reality is lost through usurpation, which produces tyranny. As long as a single slave remains to walk the earth, your release is not complete. Complete restoration of the sonship is the only goal of the miracle-minded. This is a course in mind training. All learning involves attention and study at some level. Some of the later parts of the course rest too heavily on these earlier sections not to require their careful study. You will also need them for preparation. Without this, you may become much too fearful of what is to come to make constructive use of it. However, as you study these earlier sections, you will begin to see some of the implications that will be amplified later on. A solid foundation is necessary because of the confusion between fear and awe, to which I have already referred, and which is often made. I have said that awe is inappropriate in connection with the sons of God, because you should not experience awe in the presence of your equals. However, it was also emphasized that awe is proper in the presence of your Creator. I have been careful to clarify my role in the atonement without either over or understating it. I am also trying to do the same with yours. I have stressed that awe is not an appropriate reaction to me because of our inherent equality. Some of the later steps in this course, however, involve a more direct approach to God Himself. It would be unwise to start on these steps without careful preparation, or awe will be confused with fear, and the experience will be more traumatic than beatific. Healing is of God in the end. The means are being carefully explained to you. Revelation may occasionally reveal the end to you, but to reach it, the means are needed. Distortions of miracle impulses. Distortions of miracle impulses, yes. I love this section because it helped me so much. The confusion of miracle impulses with physical impulses is a major perceptual distortion. Physical impulses are misdirected miracle impulses. All real pleasure comes from doing God's will. This is because not doing it is a denial of self. So, what are we talking about here? We're talking about physical impulses. And I had an experience with both myself and my partner where we had a lot of issues with physical impulses, meaning like sexual attraction or attraction to bodies. And we were both And especially me, I was so confused. Like, what is this about? And why do I feel so triggered by it? And if we're living in this body experience which has these desires, what do we do with that? It was extremely confusing. These experiences of feeling guilt and shame after having some sort of sexual thought, or like being drawn to like look at physical bodies or body parts. It was just like, what is happening? And it happened so frequently that I knew that it was coming up because there was something that I was perceiving incorrectly about this. Basically, I was judging anything sort of sexual, anything hypersexual, or anything that was just, I don't know, that could trigger physical impulses, whether in myself or partner or anybody in general. It was just like, I was just so triggered by it. And of course, I turned to the Course. This was earlier on in my understanding of the Course, and I was just looking for any sort of explanation, or what does this say about like the body and the physical desires and impulses that we have, and realizing that they were all miracle impulses, that it was a way that my mind was projecting onto something external to have an experience of guilt. It was using that sort of as a crutch. The ego was using it to show me basically like, oh, you should feel guilty because of these thoughts and perceptions that you're having. And reading this and realizing, oh, this is a miracle impulse. There's a call to see things differently. If I'm seeing at the level of body and form, and I'm judging it, and I'm judging myself for judging it, then I'm stuck. And realizing that they were just miracle impulses, a desire for a miracle just calling out every single time. It wasn't about pleasure, it was actually about guilt. It was about the attraction to guilt, which is what the ego does. It is very much attracted to guilt because that's one of the best ways, one of its best tactics to stay embedded. And says, yeah, all real pleasure comes from doing God's will. So, we might be, based on our programming and our physical bodies, we might be attracted to bodies or forms, and we might have sex and we might have sexual experiences, and it might be pleasurable. It might be very pleasurable in the moment. But what usually comes with pleasure is the other side of the coin, which is pain or guilt, which is kind of, again, the ego's way of being like, haha, got you. It's actually the same. It's in a way the same thing. But all real pleasure comes from doing God's will. And so this is because not doing it is a denial of self. So following God's will simply. And by the way, this is not to say don't have sex, don't have sexual thoughts, don't enjoy sex. It's not saying that. It's just realizing the depth of real pleasure, that it actually comes from being connected with God. We think that we can join at the level of body, but even with, say, science, like even when say, two hands are touching, if you zoom in, actually it's a lot of space. 99 point whatever percent of what seems to be matter is actually space. It's not really, it doesn't really matter. And so we think that we're joining at the level of body. Like if we're having sex, we think that that's where we're actually joining, but it's never really possible to fully join at that level. But we can join at the level of the mind through God. That's where we are really joined, where we're already joined. And I love this line, just, child of God, you were created to create the good, the beautiful, and the holy. Do not forget this. The love of God, for a little while, must still be expressed through one body to another, because vision is still so dim. You can use your body to help you enlarge your perception so you can achieve real vision, of which the physical eye is incapable. Learning to do this is the body's only true usefulness. So yeah, we're here to create, okay? To create good. And that the love of God must still be expressed through one body to another. Again, this is kind of like the previous section where it's meeting at the level that you're at. Wherever your mind is, meet yourself there. And so we all believe that we're in these bodies, most of us. So we meet ourselves at this level. And so if we believe that extending love happens at the level of the body, then great, we'll go with that. Until we can have the real vision. And then this line, if you offer miracles, you will be equally strong in your belief of them, and the strength of your conviction will then sustain the belief of the miracle receiver. This is actually something I also learned in another healing modality, where when someone comes to you for healing, it's actually more about your own belief that it's happening, that it's really working. And that's more important than the person that's coming to receive the healing or miracle. And it was really interesting to witness that in practice and to see how much I was willing to believe a miracle or not. It says, reality is lost through usurpation, which produces tyranny. As long as a single slave remains to walk the earth, your release is not complete. Basically, I had a dream that the shot that everyone's getting, against this virus that seems to be present, was enslaving people. And it was like a slow reprogramming process that was happening. And this is all a dream, remember? And then in the dream, I was like one of the few people that was awake and was like, I'm not going to accept this reprogramming and brainwashing and being enslaved. Like, no, thank you. And all I had to do was say like, no. And that was that. No one had to do anything, it's that free will aspect. But I had this feeling of like, but what about everybody else? And it says about complete restoration of the sonship is the only goal of the miracle-minded. So as long as a single slave remains to walk the earth, your release is not complete. So as long as I am perceiving, as long as I keep perceiving so many of us are enslaved, that is with our minds, that is asleep, then I am not released. So my job is to perceive the wholeness, realize that we're already whole, perceive the wholeness in all, and the freedom in all. And that's how we become free ourselves. And then this line is classic. This is a course in mind training. So that is something that I experienced. It was, and especially through the lessons, through the daily lessons, it's a mind training. And you know what? I would say even beyond the lessons, it's applying it after you've done the lessons or while you're doing the lessons, applying it in the daily life experiences. That's where the real training ground is. It can be easy to just sit here and read these concepts of like, oh, we're one with God, la, la, la. But then you have an experience in your life where you get pissed off about something. That's the training ground. That's where you can change your perception. And it acknowledges here the need for preparation. And if you don't have the preparation, you may be too fearful of what is to come to make constructive use of it. And it acknowledges, I think it's in the manual for teachers in the back, where it says basically you're free to approach the book, the course, however you want. You can do the flip method and just jump around. You can start with the manual for teachers. You can start with the lessons. You can start with the text. Doesn't matter. But this is also acknowledging the importance of some of these sort of prerequisites. It's like you almost have to warm up your mind in order to accept the bigger shifts. And it says that some of the later steps involve a more direct approach to God himself. And so it would be unwise to start the steps without preparation, or all will be confused with fear, and the experience will be more traumatic than beatific. So This happens with, say, some plant medicine ceremonies, or with this or other. There are other experiences which can be traumatic because you don't know what you're experiencing, you don't know what you're witnessing, and it can be so vast and so incredible that it can actually be kind of scary. And then you're like, oh, I never want to do that again. Which is why, this is a course in mind training. So it's like slowly, basically shifting your mind to be able to experience, to be able to accept the fullness of God. And it's going to be later in the course where we realize that we're not really afraid of fear. We're actually afraid of love. In my book is pretty synonymous to God, like pure unconditional love. And that realizing that deep down there's some feeling of fear, often a feeling of guilt because of the initial separation. Going back to the Adam and Eve story of we believe that we separated from God, therefore we should be guilty, and therefore we fear the wrath or the punishment of God. So this all being said, it is recommended to go slowly. And that is the end of chapter 1. Thank you so much.